Kevin Harvick, one of 4 members of the ownership team for the Cars Tour that also includes Jeff Burton, Dale Earnhardt Jr., and Justin Marks, recently shared his thoughts on how they are policing the sport, especially considering the events that happened at Tri-County during the Pro Late Model event. Just in case you need a refresher, early in the race, or I guess about halfway through the race, Hayden Quaffle and Katie Hettinger got in a wreck as they were racing for the lead. We can take a look at this here. See here, we're looking at the Flow Racing replay. They bang doors. Quaffle gets loose. And then Hettinger, he spins her around and into the wall she goes, and she collects a number of other cars. Here's another look. He obviously drifts off the track, gets right into her. They're trying to save it. She can't. She brings it over, cracks, goes into the wall, gets clipped, and smashes the rear end of her car. Significant damage. Following on the next restart, she would get revenge against Caden Quaffle, who would be sent to the rear for being involved in the wreck. You can see this here. You can see right there, she clips him in the left rear, spins him around, takes herself out, smashes the inside retaining wall on the pit wall. Quaffle would actually save his car and would end up going on to win the race. And the reason why he would win the race is because we would have this happening on the last lap of the race between Gavin Bichelle and Ashton Higgins. Bichelle would purposely take out Higgins in an attempt to win the race. He would be DQ'd, and Quaffle, who was running in third at the time, would cross the line and win the race. So let's take a look. You can see there, just sends him spinning into the corner. And then after the race, all kind of mayhem would break out. People fighting, punches being thrown. Police were trying to get involved, tossing people out. Higgins came and smashed his hand on the windshield of Michelle's car. It was just an absolute mayhem brawl that happened. Following that, we would get some harsh penalties here over on the Cars Tour website. Hettinger was actually suspended an entire race, effective for the last race at Caraway, ending her chances to win the championship for retaliating and intentionally wrecking Quaffle. Higgins was put on probation for the remainder of the season and was fined $500 for the unauthorized crossing of the racing surface to confront another competitor. Gavin Bichelle was also put on probation for the rest of the season for rough driving. We then had multiple fines being laid out for members of the Higgins team. Shad Higgins, 1 race suspension, $500 fine. Shane Higgins, 1 race suspension, $500 fine. Coleman Higgins, 1 race suspension, $500 fine. Pearson Hensley, 1 race suspension, $500 fine. Steve Deskins, 1 race suspension at Caraway. And so Harvick was actually asked about this on the Dale Jr. download, and here's what he had to say about policing the sport and the example that they're trying to set with a lot of these penalties and showing how they want these kids to race and their competitors in the Cars Tour to race.
Honest, I mean, I'm fascinated by this in both your perspectives. I mean, because like you were talking about policing the sport, as we were talking about the truck race, but Cars Tour is not immune to having those, pit road, garage skirmishes and whatnot. And so
we just had one.
You just had one. That's right. So that was my question: is that did you guys, was that another challenge? Was that something that you guys might have had disagreements or at least different opinions on how it would be believable that you would? I mean, everybody's got an opinion on how to fix, things that are hard to fix, right? So I'm just curious about how the ownership group came together and discussed stuff like that.
Well, that one was pretty easy.
Yeah. Was it?
Yeah, and I think when you look at that, I think one of our goals has always been to, okay, how can we help point everybody in the direction of how we want them to race and act and do it in our series first. And I think that was just one of those scenarios where it was like, nope, that's not happening here. And we don't want them to fight. We don't want them to hook each other in the right rear. We don't want them to do that, because really, if they just race hard, and they're gonna run into each other naturally, and they're gonna have some disagreements. But there is a line. There has to be a line, right? Because it's just there's a limit to how you want it to be. And I think when you look at, like when I look at taking Keelan and saying, okay, when's the right time to put him in a late model stock or a super late model or a pro late model, I think to myself, I'm like, holy crap, I'm going to have to hire security, right? And that's not I mean, think about the other families that are out there racing. Like, it shouldn't be just a free for all of just chaos all the time. Like, the environment has to be correct for families to function and feel safe and do the things that they need to do. I mean, we'll figure it out. We'll figure out how to race and how to, be able to be at the point to be aggressive. But, some of the things that Delaney and I talk about is, okay, is he ready for a 40-year-old man to jump on his hood? Is he ready for is he ready for a fist fight in the pits? And I don't know. Is that really how we want it to be? I don't think so.
Yeah.
I think.
So that is what Kevin Harvick had to say about policing the sport. Clearly, they laid the law down with Katie Henscher. They are not going to tolerate any kind of retaliation, one race suspension. And again, they made it so she did not have a chance to win the championship there, taking all of her hopes away by suspending her for the last race. So clear line in the sand drawn there. As for the fighting, the one race suspensions and $500 fines for multiple crew members. So pretty hefty fines. And then also race suspensions and then putting teams on probation. We've also seen them suspend Connor Jones after he was put on probation for some rough driving. So they've definitely set a line in the sand. They're letting their drivers know what they can and cannot do. And we'll see if they continue to enforce that line, but it looks like they do indeed have that line. So I leave it to you guys. What do you make of how they're policing the car store, and do you think they're doing a good job of it? Do you still agree with kind of the line in the sand that they've drawn with Katie Henscher, with Ashton Higgins, and the Ashton Higgins team in the brawl that happened? Do you think there maybe should have been some more fines and suspensions for all those other people that were involved in that brawl? I mean, I think there was a lot more people involved in that, so maybe they should have identified some other people there that were involved in it and maybe penalize them to the extent that they did most of the Higgins team.